Let's begin with the war in Afghanistan, which I know you have many interesting thoughts on.
I don't have any interesting thoughts, but what do you want to talk about in the war?
Well, this is a headline that I saw today, and this combines war and journalism. The thing you care about, the thing I care about, because I don't care about war. Headline I saw today, it's everywhere. I'm pulling the Reuters Yahoo News headline out here. Gates says killing of Afghan boys a setback. And I thought, because I like Robert Gates, because he's a thoughtful man. And I thought, why would he say that? Just calling some terrible tragedy, which has set our progress back in Afghanistan, as have many of these events where we accidentally kill civilians, in this case a terrible tragedy of killing 9 Afghan boys who were looking for
firewood, who were apparently executed by a helicopter flying by who said, oh, there's 9 guys out there. And they just gunned them all down.
So I thought, how could Robert Gates call this a setback when it's so much more? But here's Robert Gates' actual quote. Not only is their loss a tragedy for their families, it's a setback for our relationship with the Afghan people. That's what he said at a news conference with Hamid Karzai. Look, this isn't that big a deal, but it's a sign of what frustrates me about journalism. So the headline...
Hold on, but now what you're saying is Ben Mankiewicz says killing of 9 Afghan boys, not that big a deal.
That's exactly right. That's exactly sort of the same situation. What he called it was a tragedy. Gates says killing of Afghan boys a tragedy is more accurate, and a setback for our relationship with the Afghan people. That's true. But the killing of the Afghan boys isn't a setback. I mean, I see what they're saying, but it suggests a cavalier attitude by Gates about the killing in the headline, and he does not have a cavalier attitude about it. So I just find it...
No, I don't think anyone involved in it probably does. I'm sure the pilots are just horrified at what they did as well. I mean, that's going to haunt them for the rest of their life, what they did.
And it can happen so easily, right?
It can happen easily because you're out there, you're flying, you don't know who's going to shoot at you, you don't know who's friend or foe. It's what happens when you bomb people from the air. You don't always know exactly what's on the ground, and you've got like a second or two to make a decision.
And these rules of engagement that we read about, they're constraining and they give you some idea of how you should proceed to some extent, but when you're right there, you got to make this call.
You got to make the call, and the person's always thinking about their own benefit and everything else just as quickly, because if you make the wrong call, that person could shoot you down. So it's a tragedy all around. But I mean, war is a tragedy all the way around. The relentless kind of cheerleading for war that we've had in this country in the last decade is done mainly by people who never fought it, and they don't know the kind of scars that not just we're inflicting on everybody in Afghanistan, the Middle East, but that you're inflicting on your own soldiers that are over there, who are going to come back and, you know, they may be fine and cavalier about it for a year or two, but 8, 9, 10 years down the road, everything they've done is going to come back to haunt them.
When we discuss what it's like to fight over there, or what it's like to fight anywhere, and many people discuss those rules of engagement, and you know, these conversations are so simplistic sometimes, and obviously I certainly am not qualified to engage in a sophisticated manner about what happens. But it strikes me that these conversations about, oh, we need to take the gloves off for these guys and these restrictions curtail progress. And I think there's obviously some validity in that from time to time.
And the restrictions all grew out of historical issues. I mean, I remember when I was probably 6 years old, the first time I ever saw my dad cry that I remember was he had a friend named Major Boniface who was in the DMZ on patrol. And they weren't allowed...
In Vietnam?
In Korea.
In Korea.
And they weren't allowed to have bullets in their guns on patrol. And some North Korean soldiers were cutting down a tree, and then they saw the American patrol, who were, you know, basically unarmed, and they murdered them. They cut them up with axes on the border. And the guys had no bullets to fight back. So that was the first thing about, we can't send guys with bullets. Or that Reagan sent those guys to Beirut with no bullets in their guns. And then their barracks were bombed and they were shot on the streets.
And if those rules were different, if those guys had bullets, that your father's friend would have been able to fight back, but there are further repercussions.
There's further repercussions from all of it. I mean, the thing is, you just don't want to get in a situation where you're shooting people and where you have to make those kind of decisions. Because the only thing that comes out of it, it's like a choice between bad and worse.
Because what I'm getting at is that if you unleash fury and don't have these constraining rules of engagement, you're going to get more situations like this.
Oh, look, it's inevitable in a situation like Afghanistan or Iraq or any place else that you're going to have those situations because the enemy doesn't wear uniforms. They don't move in military formations. You don't know who the friend or foe is. It's inevitable. There's no way to get around it.
And then when these situations happen, although it's better not to have the rules of engagement for whatever the squad involved is at that time, the long-term repercussions for more soldiers are worse because every time we kill 9 Afghan boys, it's a lot more than a setback for our relationship with the Afghan people.
Well, how many families, how many people did those boys know? I mean, I just know.
Right.
Look, you can't look at people just because they're Muslim or they're in a different country and say, oh, they don't value human life. Dude, everybody loves their kids.
Right.
If someone killed my kids, dude, I would totally be out there fighting.
Whoever did it is as an enemy for life.
Forever.
Right.
Forever.
So we kill these 9 kids, we create, who knows, 1,000 enemies.
You can't win on this. And then what's the end gate in Afghanistan? I mean, I've got plenty of friends that have been over there, in and out, all my buddies from ROTC that stayed in the service or some paramilitary organization close to it, and they go in and out of there. And
what does that mean, some paramilitary service?
they work with different companies that work with...
So they're mercenaries, or they're...
No, or they work with the Central Intelligence or something like that. And they've all told me, they're like, dude, these people can't read, they can't write. It's like if you went back in time to the Hatfields and the McCoys and you tried to build a modern, democracy out of like 2 families who were dysfunctional. I mean, the people who are left in Afghanistan are the people who couldn't get out. They're the people that didn't have education, didn't have money, didn't have connections. They've been living through 30 years of war. You can't rebuild it by having an American soldier stand. I mean, what are we going to put a troop in every person's house? I mean, would it change your mind if soldiers were on the street telling you had to behave a certain way from another country?
General Petraeus was incredibly honest is the wrong word, but he went above and beyond what you normally see in the apology that he made regarding this. Does that make any difference?
Who cares, dude? They've lost their kids. I mean, if you had a child and
beyond
that child was killed, would you care if dude,
beyond the
really
family,
sorry.
But to the people who are sitting there chanting "Death to America"?
Those people, you're not going to sway those people.
75% says the United Nations. 75% of the civilian deaths in Afghanistan caused by our enemy in Afghanistan, not by coalition forces.
I'm not saying the Taliban are nice guys. They're not. They're fucking animals. But on the other hand, if you come in from the outside, you're already at a disadvantage on all this stuff.
Because they're there.
They're there. And what we should have done was, gotten Osama bin Laden and really poured troops in there in the first year or 2. But the way we do things in the States and our foreign policy is we try and get by on the cheap, and you can't ever get by on the cheap when you first do it, so then you kind of ratchet it up over time, and by the time you've ratcheted up, you've lost the faith of all those people who came over to you in the beginning. So I'm sure there was a lot of support for us when we first went in, and that support ebbs and ebbs and ebbs with time, because people are like, okay, you've been here how many years, and it's still not fixed.
Before we wrap this conversation up, why didn't we, and this is a hugely long conversation, but those very real stories about why we didn't go after Osama bin Laden when he was around the corner in Tora Bora. Why didn't we? What was that about?
Well, you know what it was about.
No, tell me.
Oh, well, because all the operational focus was on getting ready to attack Iraq.
And what, if we'd gotten Osama bin Laden, we couldn't have done that?
No. If you would have put in the number of soldiers it would have taken to get him. Because look, when people are like, oh, we're going to have another 30,000 soldiers for Afghanistan. Dude, 30,000 soldiers in mountainous terrain like that, I mean, it's like, you can't control it with those numbers of people.
What I think people don't understand is that if we had taken 30,000 elite trained soldiers and put them in Afghanistan to go after Osama bin Laden, we don't have such an enormous army, that would have detrimentally affected what we could have done in Iraq. Is that true?
Well, the big thing is we shouldn't have had anything to do with
I understand.
Iraq.
I understand, but
And then you could have devoted all your resources to it.
Of course.
But none of them were thinking about that because the people who were in charge were looking at it as a kind of monolithic, they're all Islamic radicals, they're all enemies of the states, and they were confusing the ex-Soviet client states with Al-Qaeda. So the plan was, let's roll back Iraq, let's roll back Syria, let's get rid of Libya, and you're gonna knock these states off, and somehow what replaced them will be better.
When you see Gates say that we have to have some presence there till 2014, and it ratchets down until then.
Look, what's going to happen in 2014?
Well, it'll be the second year of the Palin presidency, the second year of the Mitch Daniels presidency.
In her dreams. But in 2014, look, we're going to be getting out. The Karzai government's not going to last because...
He's a strong leader.
Yeah, he was...
I don't really care what your faith is, and I respect his faith and everybody's faith. Take off the hat, dude. Come on, wear a different hat. I
thought Karzai was awesome in Stargate. I thought the performance he did was amazing. But look, that regime's not going to last. And who's going to come in after them? It's going to be Pakistan's ISI is going to back the Taliban or another extreme group to come in, so it becomes a Pakistani client state.
Pakistan's secret police?
The ISI.
That's who that is. Right?
Yeah. But what they'll do is, so they'll take back control of it. And really, what have we gotten in Afghanistan anyway? We haven't gotten rid of Al-Qaeda. We haven't defeated the Taliban. We've just kind of stirred up a hornet's nest and pissed everybody off. And yeah, they've announced like a year ago, Afghanistan's full of minerals. Well, guess who's going to get the mining rights to all those minerals? China, which is right next door. So we've spent all this blood, all this treasure, killed all these people, and what are we getting out of it? Nothing. We're not that much safer than we were before. Osama bin Laden's still alive, Al-Qaeda is still working, the Taliban's as strong as it ever was. What are we getting out of it? Why lose another 20 or 30 American lives? Why spend another, 40, 50, $60 billion?